My name's Meredith Callagher, and I own a franchise called the Scout Guide Miami. I'm recording this video in the gorgeous Windsor Court Hotel in New Orleans, if you can't tell from my frizzy hair, where we just wrapped the 2019 Owners Conference. In this video, I'm going to share with you my 5 favorite takeaways that I learned this week. This is the Meredith Callagher Show, where we talk about marketing plans for small businesses, because I believe every small business should have a plan in place for success. Hope is not a strategy, you guys. For the first time ever, the Scout Guide Franchise Owners Conference was held not in Charlottesville, Virginia, where our headquarters are, but in New Orleans, where the owner of that franchise, Taylor Morgan, she has been with the franchise owner the longest in our organization, which was cool because we got to learn from her, we got to learn from her photographers, and we got to hear from her customers that have been with her since the beginning. And then of course we learned from the other franchise owners and from our headquarters staff. My 5 favorite takeaways from the 2019 Owners Conference are: 1, when you go to a conference, set goals for what you would like to get out of it. 2, the biggest issue in the mind of your prospective customers are not price, are not value, but risk. Number 3, often your clients want to be told what to do. Number 4, it can be very helpful and effective for your business to step into the shoes of your employees. Not just at the beginning when you start a business, but frequently as the business grows. Number 5, just because something has worked in the past doesn't mean it still works now. You've got to evaluate the needs of your customers now. Now let's dive into each of these. Number 1, before you go to a conference, set goals on what you want to get out of the conference. I am so glad I did this because I might have forgot to ask some of the questions that I was looking for answers. Specifically for me, I have an intern for the summer for the first time, and I wanted to learn how to utilize that intern best. Many of the other franchise owners have used interns in the past, so I got some great valuable information because I set the intention to ask that question. Number 2, the biggest issue in the mind of your potential customer is not price, it's not value, it's risk. What is it going to cost them if they make a mistake? I really like this. As I started thinking about it, I need to make sure that I'm not speaking to the question of price. We talked about that business owners know that if they are going to advertise, they're going to have to spend money. So a lot of times, because I sell an expensive package that's very valuable, they are getting a bang for their buck. But I don't need to speak to why they need to spend the money. I need to make sure that they are not worried that they're risking it, that they know that they're going to get what they pay for. And the way that I can do that I can communicate that there's little risk, is be completely confident in what I'm selling to them. And I think that's important for me because often, not just me, but the other franchise owners, we try to speak to the price. But if we start kind of dancing around the price or really trying to validate the price, it can come off that we aren't confident in our ability. I like that. For me, that mindset is going to help me, and I thought it could help you. When you're selling something, think about addressing the risk. You want to make sure that that potential customer is not worried that they're going to make a mistake. Number 3, often people just want to be told what to do. You know, we're all busy. We don't need a bunch of options. Just you, the expert, tell me what to do and let's move on. We involve our customers in the graphic design, and the Scout Guide New Orleans editor was telling us that really we know better than our customers which ads looks best. So sure, they might come in with ideas, but we should just go in confidently and tell them what to do. And most of the time people respond to that because, especially in our industry, our local business owners are busy. They don't need a bunch of options. They just want to hear what the expert says. And when they trust us, we're right anyway because we do know what's best, because we have a network of great advertisements for locally owned businesses. Number 4, as an owner of your business, it's important to step into your employees' shoes and actually perform the tasks that you're asking them to do. This is so cool. Our franchise was started by 2 women named Christy and Susie in Charlottesville, Virginia. They created a book of photographs of advertisements of locally owned businesses in Charlottesville, Virginia. And it took off and it was loved there. And so after a couple of years, they franchised it. and it grew, and we're now in 64 cities. And for the past probably 5 years, Christy and Susie have run our franchise, and they sit in an office with about 10 women that they run our printing, they run the graphic design, they sell more franchises, and they actually hired an editor and photographer to run the Charlottesville franchise, to run the original business that they started. But when that person moved on and they were looking for a perfect franchise owner for Charlottesville, within that process, one of them suggested to the other, maybe we should do this again. And they did. Their book's actually about to come out. I think it's volume 11 for Charlottesville. It's about to come out next month. And you guys, I am so glad they did that. They announced at this conference that they got rid of some of the practices that they were asking us to do, which none of us liked, and then they realized for themselves why they didn't like it. And then they updated and implemented some best practices that they saw that we needed because they were walking in our footsteps. Isn't that awesome? I love that. So take a note from Christy and Susie. Step back into your employee's shoes every once in a while. It was fun to hear that today when we were at Brennan's restaurant, have you heard of breakfast at Brennan's in the French Quarter? The GM had a similar experience. He was really having trouble with his 119 employees, training them on fine dining, and he went to the owner, and Ralph Brennan said to him, "Hey, how many of your employees have ever eaten at a restaurant with a tablecloth?" He said, "I don't know." He went and polled his staff. Only 15% of them had ever eaten at a restaurant with a tablecloth. And he said, he hadn't looked at it from his employees' point of view. They didn't know how to serve the customers because they didn't understand the experience the owners wanted the customers to have. So the GM fixed that, and now when he hires a new employee, he invites them to dine with him, and he says it's really produced results for him. His employees are performing at a better level because he took the time to look at what was happening from their point of view. Number 5, just because something's worked in the past doesn't mean it's going to work now. You need to constantly be evaluating what your customers want. Today we had the pleasure of hearing from Ralph Brennan that currently owns with a partner Brennan's restaurant in the French Quarter, but he actually bought this restaurant 5 years ago. For 70 years they've owned Brennan's, his family, but before 5 years ago it was his cousins, and so he took over and he got to run it as he wanted to, and he's doing great. It's very successful. But he said he did learn some lessons over the last 5 years, and one of them was he had to be willing to make some changes. He gave us 2 examples. One of them was dress code. He really thought it was important to keep the traditions of Brennan's as it always has been. They used to have a coat and tie dress code. He really tried to enforce that. But what Brennan's also had was the reputation of being very hospitable, of having great hospitality. And hospitality is not judgmental, Mr. Brennan told us. And he was starting to feel that way when he was often having to explain why they had a coat and tie dress code. It's tradition. Well, and he said he started to feel like he was coming up from a place of judgment as he was not arguing, but almost arguing with customers why they couldn't wear, no tie or come in without a jacket. So they changed that dress code. They feel like that it's been a more welcoming environment for today's customer. Another thing he changed was his favorite menu item. They had crepe Franklin. This is Mr. Brennan's favorite thing on the menu, and it's made with strawberries. But they started to notice that the younger customers, the younger audience, it was really important to have farm to table or fresh ingredients, and strawberries aren't always in season. And so much to his chagrin, they rotate the fruit that's on this crepe, which he was really not comfortable with because it was traditionally, for 70 years, it had been one of the favorite menu items, including his own. But he made the change. They now use seasonable fruit for this menu item, and it's really worked out. They feel like their farm-to-table loving customers are pleased and keep coming back. I love that Mr. Brennan was willing to make those changes, And for me in my own business, it just reminded me to keep asking questions of my customers. I sell annual advertising packages each year, and so I need to check in with my clients and make sure that I'm delivering what they want. And if I notice that a few of them seem to be missing something, then I can tweak it as we go. I appreciated that reminder. I hope you enjoyed this video. I sure have had a great time here in New Orleans, and I will see you next week.